win that. The crowd are on their feet. Eala barely has the energy to get to the net to congratulate her opponent on a classic.
So we've just seen Chen and Eala dominate the number 2 seeds and half of the winning team in the Australian Open. Zhang, who was actually in the team with Buksha, did win the Australian Open a couple weeks ago. So massive win for them and massive win for Southeast Asian tennis.
Novak Djokovic recently made a statement regarding Alexandra that has captured the attention of the tennis community worldwide. Given Djokovic's stature as arguably the greatest player in the history of the sport, his remarks carry considerable weight. When he referred to Eala as a superstar during a press conference, this was not a casual compliment, it represented a significant endorsement that could profoundly influence her career trajectory. Let us examine precisely what Djokovic said and why this acknowledgement is more consequential than it may initially appear. Before we proceed, I invite you to reflect, were you familiar with Alexandra prior to this development, or is this your first introduction to her amid the ensuing discussions? 2. Provide context, Djokovic made these remarks during a routine press conference at the Australian Open. A reporter posed a fairly standard question about the tournament's evolution over the 2 decades he has participated in Melbourne. Specifically, the inquiry focused on his perspective regarding the growing crowds, the increasing presence of corporate sponsorships, and the ongoing debates about whether the event has become overly commercialized and congested.
I saw the other day with Eala, that's been a talk, and which is understandable. There's some players coming from respective countries, like she's coming from Philippines, which is now a big deal. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player from that country, which is a big country, and there's a big interest. So things like that happen. I mean, it's you could argue that it was, maybe a poor schedule, and maybe they could schedule him on a bigger court. Yes, but again, she's so young and she's just coming through. So, and obviously the first couple rounds, the schedule is so packed. The big courts with big names, it's difficult. It's not easy to manage that. But again, it's a good problem to have, to be honest. Let's just imagine if there's a lack of people coming, or that stands are empty. That's a bigger problem.
Most players might offer a predictable response, something about the growth of tennis being a positive development. Novak Djokovic, however, took the conversation in a markedly different direction. He characterized complaints about overcrowded arenas as a luxury problem, emphasizing that every tournament organizer aspires to sell out venues and break attendance records. He succinctly noted that there are far worse challenges for a tournament than having too many fans, a perspective shaped by decades of experience. That Djokovic's remarks reflect an intimate knowledge of the Australian Open's evolution. He recalled a time when the tournament barely had adequate facilities, sharing training spaces with a local football club and using a gym across the street belonging to an Australian rules football team. After initially misnaming the team, he corrected himself and acknowledged the seriousness of that rivalry. His point was clear: the Australian Open has transformed from a modest event relying on borrowed spaces into a premier global tournament boasting state-of-the-art indoor arenas, recovery centers, and world-class amenities. This growth is not a departure from tennis tradition, it is evidence of the sport's expanding global influence. The conversation then shifted to Eala, and this is where Djokovic's analysis gained particular significance. He referenced the recent controversy surrounding Eala's match being scheduled on a small outer court, which nevertheless drew thousands of fans attempting to gain entry. Djokovic noted that this was a major topic of discussion within the player locker room, and rightly so. Security measures were overwhelmed, and the logistical framework faltered, creating considerable disorder. Importantly, Djokovic did not characterize these difficulties as a failure of tournament management. Rather, he framed them as a symptom of a larger, transformative moment within tennis. He acknowledged that organizers likely underestimated the response and should have assigned Eala to a larger court. Yet, the core issue is why such a turnout occurred. Eala represents the Philippines, a nation of over 110 million people, who have not previously seen a tennis player capture international attention in this way. When Djokovic calls her a superstar, it is not a casual compliment. It is the greatest player in tennis history recognizing that Eala has transcended the status of a promising prospect and become a cultural phenomenon. This recognition carries weight far beyond rankings or match results. Eala carries the hopes of an entire nation, serving as an ambassador on the world stage. This is a unique pressure, one that distinguishes her from most young players still finding their way professionally. The crowd at her match was not merely enthusiastic fans, they were deeply invested supporters who traveled great distances, determined to witness their icon live. That said, there is an undeniable organizational oversight. Scheduling a player with such a substantial fan base on a venue that accommodates only a few hundred spectators was a miscalculation. The assumption that fans would simply watch remotely or quietly observe failed to account for the changing demographics and scale of tennis fandom. Tournament organizers remain anchored in the outdated belief that only established Western stars command large crowds, yet the sport is globalizing more rapidly than the infrastructure can adapt. Eala's rise illustrates this shift with striking clarity. Djokovic's commentary on balancing crowd management with preserving the fan experience is particularly insightful. The fervor surrounding Eala is a preview of challenges to come: emerging markets, passionate new fan bases, and inevitable logistical complexities. Traditional scheduling models no longer suffice when cultural significance outweighs ranking points. What sets Eala apart is the speed of her ascent. Tennis traditionally nurtures stars gradually through years on tour. Eala's emergence has been almost instantaneous, a sudden surge from promising junior to national sensation, drawing unprecedented attention. This creates tension within the existing framework, which remains designed around a slower, linear path to prominence. When a player gains prominence through cultural and national resonance rather than conventional metrics, friction and confusion are inevitable. Djokovic understands this dynamic personally. Having carried the weight of a nation's expectations himself, he spoke candidly about celebrity as a golden prison, a double-edged sword that elevates and confines. Serbia's population is smaller than the Philippines, yet the pressure is comparable. For a teenager like Eala, still adapting to professional competition, this mental burden is immense. Djokovic's framing of the chaotic scene at Eala's match as a sign of tennis outgrowing its current infrastructure is a crucial observation. The first week of any Grand Slam is invariably hectic, but the rise of players like Eala adds new complexity to scheduling, media obligations, and fan engagement. Tennis is no longer just about rankings and trophies, it has become intertwined with cultural identity and national pride. When the sport's most decorated player publicly endorses Eala, it legitimizes the enthusiasm around her. Dismissals of fan fervor as mere nationalism are countered by Djokovic's validation, an endorsement from someone who understands the demands of competing at the highest level. His support also provides a degree of protection against inevitable criticism aimed at her relative inexperience or sudden fame. The contrast Djokovic drew between the Australian Open of his early years and today is striking. From shared gyms and borrowed facilities to cutting-edge venues and five-star amenities, the tournament's growth is a testament to tennis's successful global investment. Yet, this growth presents new challenges: how to reconcile traditional structures with the realities of a sport increasingly defined by cultural diversity and expansive audiences. Djokovic's preference for full, even overcrowded, venues over empty stands is a lesson tournament organizers should take seriously. A lack of fan interest signals existential risk to any sport. The fact that thousands of spectators competed for entry to see a young player from the Philippines demonstrates tennis's reach into new markets and new fan bases, a critical factor for the sport's long-term sustainability. Yes, this evolution creates short-term logistical challenges. But these are challenges worth addressing: expanding venues, improving crowd management, and revising scheduling protocols. What cannot be remedied is apathy. The question remains, is the tennis establishment prepared for this new era? For decades, the sport has been dominated by players from a limited geographic pool. Now, emerging stars from countries like the Philippines bring massive, engaged fan bases that defy traditional expectations. The response of tournament organizers will be pivotal. Will they adapt to this shifting landscape or cling to outdated paradigms, risking alienation of these new audiences? Eala's situation serves as a test case for tennis's globalization. Integrating new markets without sidelining traditional fans is a delicate balance. Djokovic's unequivocal support signals that Eala is not a fleeting phenomenon but a vital part of the sport's future. His remarks were neither patronizing nor dismissive. Rather, they positioned Eala as a peer, albeit at an earlier career stage. This acknowledgement from the sport's most successful player underscores the necessity of fresh talent from diverse backgrounds to maintain tennis's global relevance. What follows will be telling. Can Eala manage the immense pressure and develop into the player her supporters envision? Will tournaments learn from the Australian Open experience and adjust their scheduling and promotional strategies accordingly? Can tennis as an institution embrace this new era of international stars, or will it resist, risking stagnation? Djokovic's endorsement affords Eala credibility and shields her from some of the harshest early critiques. As is often the case with young, highly touted players, skepticism and scrutiny are inevitable. Yet Djokovic's praise firmly rebuffs those voices, affirming that the excitement surrounding Eala is justified and here to stay. The broader debate about commercialism at the Australian Open, while relevant, is secondary. Major sporting events evolve with investment and sponsorship, which are essential to sustain prize money and facilities that attract top talent. The critical issue is preserving the sport's core values and competitive integrity amid growth. To date, tennis has managed this balance reasonably well. The competition remains compelling, rivalries authentic, and excellence rewarded irrespective of marketing appeal. As long as this holds, commercial influences remain background context rather than defining features. In summary, Novak Djokovic's remarks go beyond mere praise. He effectively endorsed Eala as a key figure in tennis's future and called attention to the sport's unpreparedness for this rapid transformation. The chaos at her match was not a flaw but a clear indicator of tennis's expansion into unforeseen territories. For those anticipating a more dynamic and culturally diverse era in tennis, Eala's emergence signals that change is underway.